Hello there. Welcome to this next installment in this series on creating an adventure in Foundry VTT. This time we're going to explore the town of Pendaka and brave the dangers of Ashwood Forest, which will include some Hexploration. So by way of recap, on the adventure so far in Strife and Grimbone, we introduced the players to the history and the background of Varisia. We started off the adventure in the town of Pendaka. The players went into the town hall and received a mission to find out what's going on in the neighbouring town of Grimbone, a mining town for which Pendaka is dependent on shipments of silver and meteoric iron. On leaving the town hall, they were accosted gently by Gianna, the mayor's consort, who gave them a side quest, a literal FedEx quest, to deliver a letter. And once they'd got out into the open, they heard an altercation. An electric eel had been inadvertently caught in a fisherman's nets and was running amok on the docks. The players were the ones who were left to sort out this mess, and as we did a sample adventure, a sample encounter, the players were resoundingly successful. So let's start the module up. Obviously we're joining as Game Master. And we see we were left with the scene. The players were victorious as they defeated the electric eel. Unfortunately, the poor spellcasters had not had a chance to show off their talents. So let's go into the journal and add the next journal entry. We're still Chapter 1 Pendaka, Eel Catch. The next entry will be Exploring Pendaka. And I think the first thing we will do is talk about downtime activities and introduce the players to this game mechanic. So what I've done here is create a simple list, but I think I'd like to see them appear in the title bar, so I'll change these to headings. I'll go into the editor rather than the viewer, of course. Whoops, don't want the whole thing. Okay. So we got, let's start talking about it. We've got crafting is something players can do, a PC or PCs can do. They might want to craft something or repair a shield if it was damaged in the fight against the eel. They might earn income, not really relevant for us, but it's nice to introduce the players to the concept. Subsisting, if the players are wasting time, they're going to be using their gold, and there's rules for that in the game. They may go shopping with any spare money they'd had from starting a character, or they might have decided to spend some of the money that they were given by the mayor's councillor, I should say. But perhaps the thing they're most likely to do is gather information, visit specific buildings, They may decide to rest. And it's a little bit early for retraining. And just to introduce the idea that if a player is gathering information or doing something else that might require skill checks, another player can aid them in the task. Generally what I do is set the DC to be similar to the DC of the task for the second player character, and then if they're successful they give a +1 bonus, critical success gives a +2 bonus, +3 if master, +4 if legendary. So just introducing the idea of different downtime activities that the players could do if they're in Pendaka or return to Pendaka. Perhaps more interestingly, for the adventure, let's go into a bit more detail about gathering information in Pendaka. We'll add a new page. So what the GM might do here is have the players explore, gather information, diplomacy checks, and I think it's probably best to perhaps pick an item of information that suits the place that the PCs are visiting. So if they're in a market, they might get information about trade. If they're in a more religious building, they might get information about evil cult. Same for merchants, fishermen, and the temple there. So I've written as a guide, if the PCs are specifically trying to gather information about a certain individual or topic, have them spend 2 hours in an appropriate area or talking to appropriate people and make a gather information diplomacy check. Most DCs will be 15, which is kind of standard for first level trained characters. If they are successful, provide some correct information about the subject, extrapolating from your reading of the adventure. If they critically fail, provide some false information. So we can do a check here. And because there is an unpredictable outcome on a critical failure, we should have a secret trait for this check. So there we got it there. Examples of information the PCs may glean are below. Rival trade route. There is word to the south of boats laden with metals travelling east along Lake Sarantula, heading up the Underbakari River to the hold of Belkzen, Orc territory, but this shipment didn't come through Pendaka. Are the greedy folk of Grimbone using some other route to transport their goods? Are they selling it to the Orcs of Belkzen to forge weapons that may one day be wielded against honest Pendakans? And then in italics, not for the players, this is partly true, except Nemo the gnome, not the town, is doing this. So we might go to the map. And we could show this to the players. Give them a bit of context. And they're here in Ashwood. We were talking about Lake Sarantula and that's the Yonder Bakari River going there, and Holder Belkson is all the way up there. But back to our journal. We should drag this to the bottom of our list, shouldn't we? Orc armies. The orcs of Belkson are mustering to the east. Fortunately, the powerful cities of Kermaga and Korvosa are in their way. Korvosa's there and Kermaga's there. We should be safe out here to the west, and the players are going to know that that's a bit of foreshadowing, I suspect. True, but they are mustering against far greater threats to their own east, further east of Belkson there. And this will be explored in further adventures in this campaign. An evil cult. There is something wicked lying beneath the placid surface of Pendaka, a metaphorical serpent lurking under the calm waters of Clay Bottom Lake. Some cult of self-mutilation, whose symbol is a star knife, plots in the dark shadows of the town. And our note is that this is true but confused. The realm of Nidal is not so far away to the south, but the cult where they worship Zonkuthon, who's a self-mutilating god, the Midnight Lord. But this cult actually has nothing to do with that. Nor does the star knife implicate Desna. In fact, in the town, there's a cult of Lysala, the rune goddess of the ancient Thessalonians, whose symbol is a seven-bladed star knife, the Sihedron. A cultist and a few acolytes have a shrine hidden under a nondescript private home, patiently waiting again for their goddess's rise to glory. Little do they know of the legacy of Lysala's worship not far away in Grimbone. And we have merchant talk, and you might roleplay this one. Did you hear they are putting up taxes again? Any trivial problem, bandits here, trouble in Grimbone there, and the mayor's knee-jerk response is to throw money at it like it's someone else's. Well, the money is someone else's, it's mine. I say let Grimbone sort out its own problems. The gods know they should have enough silver to pay for an army. And then we got fisherman talk. A two-headed fish was caught in the nets twice just this week. A sure sign of trouble brewing. There's a curse upon that Ashwood, and anything that comes out of it, including all that stinking silver. The only honest silver in Pendaka is that on the scales of our precious catch. And this is, in brackets, superstition. And then finally, we've got the temple of Erastil. Some say the priestess is going to stand as mayor next election. She says that the town has lost its way, taken over by greed. The town should return to what it knows, to the simple ways of fishing and forestry. The Turtlebacks up north had a priest for mayor. Why can't we? And this is a false rumour, which we go into slightly more detail on when we talk about specific places in Pendaka. The priestess has no such intentions, but some would wish it would be so. So we get an idea of different attitudes and political factions, as it were, in Pendaka. So we'll save that. And now we'll talk about some of the notable locations in Pendaka. So first we got the general store, where PCs are going to spend their 400 silver from the mayor's councillor. PCs may purchase any common items up to level 1 here at list prices. Furthermore, since they are agents of the mayor, they may sell items they wish to replace at list price as well. Roleplay the shopkeeper as you please. And there are ways in Pathfinder 2nd Edition Foundry VTT for setting up merchants, but in this circumstance it might be better if the PCs are just looking at their Player's Handbook references or archives of Nethys and buying the items that way. You could create merchants and populate it with every item in the Player's Guide and all the additional books if you wanted. Pendaka Inn. The only inn in Pendaka naturally has the privilege of being named after the town. Rent per room for visitors is 5 silver pieces per night, and this includes meals. The accommodation is basic but comfortable, and the fish-themed food is basic but nourishing. PCs may receive a discount if they persuade the innkeeper they are an important business for the mayor, so there's more opportunity for role-playing and diplomacy or intimidation or perception checks. Pendaka's taverns. These are tiny, rough and dirty, fishy-smelling dives for fisherfolk and the like, situated mainly along the lakefront. The PCs would not be welcome here. Most well-to-do folk would have their drinks at the Pendaka Inn instead. So you could role-play an encounter, maybe even have a kind of fist fight. The Temple of Rastel. Whoops. Erastil is the main deity worshipped in Pendaka. Erastil is a god of the hearth and hunting and honest rural folk. This is the main deity worshipped in Pendaka. Eldara is the temple's long-serving half-elven priestess. In fact, she has been priestess in Pendaka since before any of its inhuman residents were born. As such, she represents stability and security even more than the typical preacher of Erastil. If the PCs question her about the mayor's rule or about her own possible ambitions, perhaps they'd heard the rumour before about her running for mayor, concerning the latter she simply laughs and says that if she was the political type she might have run for office 100 years ago. Concerning the former, she admits that she is saddened, even frustrated, by the changing attitudes of the town and the increasing mercantile influence. She feels there is a dark evil lurking in the Ashwood, something lingering from old Thassalon that the recent victory over the Rune Lords did not dispel. It would be naive to assume that the axe of a few years could wipe away the evils of 10,000 years. In truth, Eldara is unduly preoccupied by the mayor, and most particularly by the rise of the worship of Abadar, patron deity of merchants, and the literal rise of his temple. This has distracted her from a far more sinister threat on her doorstep, the cult of Lasala, mentioned in the rumours above, of which she remains totally unaware. Next one is the temple, site, of Abadar, which we alluded to above. This temple is currently no more than a building site, though judging from its size and complexity and the quality of the marble slabs lying in neat piles, it is certainly suitably grand, or will be. As the town has switched from fishing and forestry to silver export, so has its divine leanings, and, encouraged by the mayor and his cronies, worship of Abadar and receipt of donations on his behalf has increased to the point where a temple is being constructed in his honour, a temple to overshadow the rustic worship of Erastil. Many of the common townsfolk are unhappy about this. Perhaps some of the manifest wealth of the temple should have been diverted to filling their empty bellies and clothing their children. Flitting from point to point, overseeing activities as the new priest of Abadar, an enthusiastic and intelligent young man from Kermaga, seeking to spread the name of his deity and make his own name in the process. So there's an opportunity for role-playing there. Then we have the bookshop. This is the headquarters of the secret cult of Lasala. It is not intended for the PCs on their first exploration of town to discover this shrine hidden under a nondescript bookshop. The bookseller is a cultist of Lasala, apparently a poor fellow missing an eye and a hand in some nameless accident, who scrapes a living selling esoteric books of lore to a largely uneducated population. If the PCs wish to research ancient history, they may find some clues here, though the cultist is careful not to divulge any sensitive literature about the Rune Lords or his patron goddess. There might even be a first-level wizard spell or two among the dusty tomes that the cultist will sell for the standard price of a scroll of said level, and we can look at archives of nethers for that, or we could go to our compendium pack. For some bizarre reason, a magic user hasn't taken Force Barrage because they were looking for Magic Missile and couldn't find it, and they get the opportunity to add Force Barrage to their repertoire by buying it from the cultist. Lysala, the rune goddess of ancient Thessalonians, became evil as its people became evil, spreading the knowledge of fate and likewise promoting the principles of servitude, obedience and mortification of the flesh. And this is how the confusion between that and the worship of Zonkuthon could have arisen in Pendaka and the rumours. She appears as a human female with 6 wings, that's greedy I would say, 2 is sufficient, more than that is greedy, and a snake body. Central to the religion is the practice of self-harm to burn knowledge into the mind. Lysala created Kershu, the Undying, from the parts of many different creatures. He became her herald. This practice was glorified and mimicked by her worshippers thousands of years ago in the nameless Thessalonian city lying under Grimbone, which we'll find out more and the players will explore, who in their greed and sloth, the 2 sins, created the slave races of beast folk to work in the city's mines. As a follow-up to the adventure, when the PCs return to Pendaka, the experience they have gained of the worship of Lysala may enable them to recognise the subtle trappings of similar worship in the shop and among a few townsfolk. So when the players are perhaps coming back to and from Grimbone, this could be a relevant side quest. The apothecary. Perhaps it was if the players didn't take on the mission to fight the electric eel, perhaps someone may have rushed to the apothecary to save someone who had been injured badly by the eel. The apothecary sells first level potions and other magical consumables of similar level, as well as common material components, but he will refuse to sell to strangers, namely the PCs, until they make it clear they are on the mayor's official business. Again, some conversation skills are going to be required. The fish market. This takes place most mornings, selling the previous night's catch from the lake. Some is bought by the local folk. Much is shipped for export up and down river in barrels of salt. There's the river there. Luckily, there is a salt quarry just south of town, not to be confused with the quarry, which is actually an archaeological site, of Grimbone, where they get the silver and meteorite iron. PCs may return to the pottery cellar described in the introduction. You may wish to choose one random magical item of relatively low value among the treasures being sold, and the shopkeeper will only charge 10 silver pieces for it. Otherwise, the PCs may receive a history lesson on Old Thessalon or the Rune Lords. Some of the pottery is indeed of Thessalonian make, and could be sold on for 10 times the seller's price, but the PCs would have a long trip to Magnamar. That's probably the nearest big city. Where's Magnamar? That's over on the coast. There. To find a suitable buyer, and the pottery is 1 bulk per 10 silver piece value, so it's not really practical for an adventure. If the PCs get too greedy about selling on pottery, start to go down this rabbit hole, rather than focusing on the mission at hand, you might have an item of pottery bestow an ancient Rune Lord curse of greed upon them, a -1 penalty to will saves while the item is in their possession, and a strange reluctance to part with it except for an exorbitant price. So there's another opportunity for role-playing and introducing the idea that the sins of the Rune Lords still linger in the region. The docks. The docks are busy with fisherfolk, fish fiddlers, fish salters, and associated industries of shipwrights, hoopers, net makers, and rope makers. Shallow draft merchant vessels suitable for river travel crowd together with fishing vessels strewn with endless piles of nets and floats. Clay Bottom Lake. This freshwater lake, around 10 miles wide and twice that in length, receives waters from Storville Deep Lake to the north and from the smaller Lake Cole, and its waters path further southward along the Skull River to Lake Serentula. Before the cataclysm, some kind of metropolis might have stood on the site. That's earthfall that did away with the Rune Lords' empires. For its bottom is strewn with the peculiarly tough and time-resistant pottery characteristic of Old Thassalon. This gives the lake its name, but the folk of Pendaka give it no more than passing thought, if any at all. You could have a side quest of an underwater adventure exploring these ruins. Pendaka fortifications. Behind but separate from the town hall is a militia post with a fortified stone building and a palisade wall surrounding a training ground. Most of the training is geared towards archery. A ranger of the Black Arrows is stationed here and trains the militia, which is drawn from ordinary townsfolk, so introducing this group called the Black Arrows, which is discussed further in Grimbone. A wooden palisade 10 foot high encircles the town on the landward north, east and south sides. It extends into the waters to a depth of 10 feet to north and south. Any attack by sea would have to negotiate a maze of jetties and walkways crowded with moored fishing vessels. A walkway runs the length of the palisade on its inner side. Militiamen patrol the walls day and night, walking back and forth, supposedly looking out to the forest, but often distracted by any revelry going on within the walls. There is a rotation where one day or one night in 7, able-bodied men and women are on militia duty, excluding rich merchants, of course, who pay a tax in lieu of service. And then finally, the gatehouse. There is a single gatehouse to the northeast manned by militia, with a road turning north to Turtleback Ferry and south to Biston. Turtleback Ferry and Biston there, going along the side of the river there. Another road continues straight on northeast into the forest to Grimbone. This road is clearly of newer manufacture. Outside the walls are farms along the narrow strip of land between the river and the forest. So that's exploring Pendaka, and depending on how you sense the players acting and their wishes, you may skip through much of this, perhaps just do a bit of shopping, some minimal rumours and get on with exploring the Ashwood, or you may have a more leisurely approach and use more of this information to give a bit of fleshing out of the town of Pendaka. You might want to have the players really leave Pendaka and never return, apart from perhaps to collect their reward at the end, or you may have it as a base of operations that the players may return to Pendaka from time to time. But the dangers of Ashwood Forest do tend to limit the the tendency to travel from Pendaka to Grimbone and back too often. So we've saved that, and I think that's enough on Pendaka, and that will conclude our chapter 1. And now let's talk about Ashwood Forest and exploring the forest. So we'll set up another folder in our journal. The Ashwood. Exploring Ashwood Forest. Doing capital S. And again, because we only plan on having one page for this, we'll just have the same name. use the Ashwood area map and encounter key, which will be below. We're saying each hex is 1 mile at a speed of 25. That means the party will travel 2.5 hexes per hour, according to the rules, or 20 hexes per day. Of course, we assume 8 hours of travel, 8 hours of fiddling around, and 8 hours of sleeping. At a speed of 20, though, the party will travel only 2 hexes per hour, or 16 hexes per day. They will have to travel at the speed of the slowest party member. The PCs will be in exploration mode while in the forest. If avoiding notice, searching for hazards, scouting, defending, repeating a cantrip, or investigating for places of interest, speed is halved to 1 hex per hour, or 8 hexes per day. If the PCs forego an 8-hour long rest every 24 hours, as I've mentioned, 8 hours also spent on short rests, eating, preparing camp, etc., they are fatigued, which means is one to armor class and saves, and the PCs cannot engage in an exploration activity while they're fatigued. So that's a bit of rules about exploration. And I think now would be a good time, from the point of view of the Foundry tabletop, to talk about the party sheet a little more. This is all Foundry tabletop related, so we'll put it in this box. Now is a good time for the players to explore the party sheet. You can click on the portrait oriented page icon or the party icon sheet on the scene to open it. So let's create our Ashwood area map and then see how the party sheet works within that map, and show how we can handle exploration, introducing players to exploration, having done Downtime in Pendaka and the encounter mode when we did our fight with the electric eel. So first thing is to create our hex map. We'll go into scenes, and I've done one already here, Ashwood Forest. So here we have a hex map. So I created this in the first version of Dungeon Painter Studio, which is fine for creating flat 2D maps. When we create a map, I use this as a background, and then I had to set the magnitude of the hexes exactly to fit the hex grid. I can show you this here. So I used in my background image a JPG file that I had with a hex map already on it. It's GM only. I want the GM to be able to control when players look at this. And then on the grid, rather than squares, I chose hexagonal columns even. The rows have a different orientation of the hexes, and odd and even is explaining whether you start like that or just with a like over there. And then I'm afraid it's a lot of fiddling around. You choose a grid size and have to scale the dimensions. You can take the ratio lock off if you want to expand horizontally or vertically to get the hexagons exactly equal, and you can adjust the offset here. I set the grid scale to 1 mile per hex. So some Hexploration maps are large-scale continental campaign maps where each hex may be a day's travel. This is a much smaller scale one, but I think it's still useful to use Hexploration. Obviously we're using Hexploration instead of Squaresploration because of tessellation, that you have more flexibility with choosing direction with hexagons, 6 choices rather than 4, and it gets a little bit around the problem of going diagonally being 1.4 approximately the length of going horizontally. Showing how it might work, we could get our character. Who should we choose for exploring? Why not Ezran? And as we drag it on there, the GM and the players will see it turn into token mode, and you can see the circle fits quite nicely within the hex, because we'd set our hex grid to be identical to the underlying hexes of the map, and because we'd set the scale of distance 1 mile per unit, if we drag over there, instead of the 5 feet jumps, we're getting 1 mile jumps. So we can see 3 miles there, and then 4 miles there, and then if we're going horizontally, it's going up and down, up and down, up and down, 4 miles horizontally. Now, if you're running this with players, this is where the party sheet comes in. Oh, let's talk about how we created the map and the tabs on the map first. So the labels here was part of the background, but on top of this I've done tabs, and the reason why I've done this is rather than have 2 maps, one for the players and one for the GM, which is what we might have to do for if we were playing tabletop pen and paper, we can have 1 map and we can just have invisible parts of the map. So I've created, for example, a set of crags that we can see faintly as a GM, but is set invisible to players. We go into our tabs, into our tile control, and now we can select this. So this is all in the background layer. We've not selected foreground. And we can click on the properties. So I created a cutout of this in Dungeon Painter Studio, and then made it transparent by using paint.net to save it as a PNG or WebP file, and we can overlay that on top of the background simply by going to our modules, going to our own module, assets, and now I have a tiles folder where I've got these tiles, and I can drag them over there, land them, and then resize them. And I've selected invisible. The red line around the hooded figure, the red border around the hooded figure indicates it's invisible. We toggle that off and see it's more clearly visible now, and that would now be visible to the players. So the idea is that as the players and the PCs explore, and they have explored an area, we make it visible as the map goes on. We talked about the party sheet. Now is a good time for the players to explore the party sheet, as I mentioned. So we can click on the page icon or the party icon sheet on the scene to open it. So we go to the party thing there, and we can drag there to the bottom of the map. So we just come from Pendaka and we're heading northeast along the path, the relatively new path that leads to Grimbone. So players will see that there's a path there, and it's obviously a case of don't leave the path. But they're starting here. If you want to spring the tokens out, you go deposit PC tokens, and they're there, and the players can double click and look at their party sheets. But we can have the party move here to represent the movement of the party. Players may say where they're going to go, or you could nominate one of the tokens the party leader, and then one of the players could move the token themselves. But the party sheet has more information attached to it. If we double left click it, we get an overview tab, an exploration tab, and a stash tab. So in the overview tab, we can see the total number of languages that the group as a whole can learn, where at least one PC knows this language, and obviously all four of them can speak Common. Taldane refers to Taldor being the kingdom that kind of seeded itself to create modern Avestan. One of them knows Draconic, that's Ezran. Two know Kelish, Kyra, and Valeros know Kelish, etc. We can do their hero points there. By left clicking and right clicking, we can add and subtract hero points. We can see their special senses, who's got dark vision or low light vision. We can see their saving throws, and we can even do, by clicking there, we can even get them to roll perception checks. And we see their skills that they're at least trained in. They can roll there, and you can kind of see who's got the best skill for different tasks. A little bit more on party skills there, like the best skill out of all the party members, and we can see who's got different skill levels by mousing over them. Party languages, party skills, and recall who's got the best recall knowledge checks. So this is an aid both to the players and to the GM. In the exploration tab, we've got travel speed. We can see that all the PCs have a 25-foot movement speed, so the travel speed is going to be at the slowest rate is 25. So we don't have anyone in heavy armour, fortunately, or any dwarves, fortunately. And we're saying that they can do one exploration activity. This is if we're doing exploration as well as movement. A bit more on their speeds there. And here we have an ability to rest by the whole party instead of the one just on the players' tabs. And this is a means of generating a check where all the players have to make a check according to a certain DC, and you generate a prompt. And we can choose the skill that they're going to be using. Say they all have to make an athletics check to jump across the stream, whether it's secret or not. Generate a prompt, and so we can ask the players all to make their checks here. Ezran is not very good at jumping streams. Also here we've got activities. These are our exploration activities, which I alluded to here. But none of them are created, but clicking that prompts us to choose an action. So what we need to do is find an exploration action or activity that we can then choose from. So if we go into our trusty compendium pack, and you can really see how fantastic a job the Pathfinder 2nd Edition team, who are a team of volunteers who create content for Foundry VTT and all the Pathfinder 2nd Edition systems. What a fantastic job they've done. So say Ezran is going to be detecting magic as an activity. Which I think is here. And then we create that as active. That's his exploration activity. And then we could have Valeros. He could be defending with his shield. Or he might be scouting. And he can choose which one he's using. And Kyra could be searching, so we'll look for search. So search is the exploration activity equivalent of seek, the encounter activity. Activate that. Now Kyra's searching, so she has good perception, being a cleric with high wisdom, and perhaps we can say that she's looking for snares or pitfalls. Finally, Meriziel obviously is avoiding notice, the exploration equivalent of sneaking. So we could say that she's travelling along the undergrowth where there's cover, either just to the left or just to the right of the path, possibly scouting ahead, but the players can decide exactly what they want to do. When I ran this adventure, I laid on very thick about the tales of the green flying beasts over the Ashwood Forest, and one of the player characters spent their whole time looking up at the sky. So they got a crick in the neck, but I said they could have a 1+1 extra circumstance bonus to initiative if something was flying from above. But the only things that ever came at them from above were skeletons. That's a story for another time. I think we've done enough now. Maybe we'll talk about the skeletons next time. So to recap, we fleshed out Pendaka, talked about downtime activities, rumours and places of interest in the town, and then we introduced a Hexploration map with the exploration activities that the characters could perform. So thanks very much for listening and watching, and look forward to speaking to you next time. Bye.